everyone, welcome to UI5ers Live. First off, I want to give a warm welcome to our panelists for today. Joining us for the very first time, Patric Ksinsik from our team. You are muted right now.
Hello, hello everyone.
Nice to have you with us. And as well, our regulars, Stefan Beck.
Hey.
And Andreas Kunst.
Hello.
Yeah, and I'm Margot Wolny, your host for today. So today we are going to dive into the topic of how to use Gen AI with UI5. And here Patric is going to show us an experimental prototype he has been working on. And this is a UI5 app that interacts with commands using OpenAI. And then Andreas will be talking about control development, and here specifically about how you can embed third-party content to your custom control. Right, Andreas? Was this correct?
Perfect.
Perfect. Yeah, but before we get into all that, I think, Stefan, you also wanted to share something, right?
Yeah. There's one small but I think important news that I would like to make you aware of. And basically you can see if you look into the What's New section of SAP UI5 122, we here have the support now for async control event handlers. That means you can from now on use the async and await JavaScript syntax for control event handlers. Why is it specifically important from our perspective? Obviously, we always strive for modern JavaScript features to the extent possible, and it is one additional. And the other part is also if you listen to our version 2.x statements, we always ask you use asynchronous API and wherever possible. And now with this async and await option for the control event handlers, this is a very nice option of which I would like to make you aware. Have basically fun using it, and therefore, as you have a package agenda, giving directly back to you.
Then I think we can quickly hand over to Patric.
So you should see the screen with the prototype I wanna show. This is called Chat UI5, and as Margot introduced, it's a prototype we have created SAP internally last year. Which allows for natural language interaction for end users with a UI5 application. So what you see here, it's an employee maintenance application, a small one with a registration form. And here in the right sidebar, you see the visual representation of Chat UI5, which allows for chat input, as you know it, by text. You can also enter speech, and yeah, I think the demo will show the features, and after the demo I will briefly talk about the technical background, how it's implemented, and the main ideas behind it. I'm now in the role of an HR employee, and I will do several steps now in employee maintenance. And the first step is that I get an email with data for a new hire from a colleague, Claire, head of marketing, and I'm supposed to create this new employee with first name, last name, everything which is in the mail. And with Chat UI5, I just copy the mail and paste it here. And so normally you would have to take this over, first name, last name, everything. And now the machinery is running, analyzing this this chat message, and you see that the data has been correctly assigned to the labeled fields here, has been extracted and added. Also, the current date is considered. So we have here this start beginning of February as a start date for the new employee. And this is really then February 1 in the next year and everything else. So this is very quick. So in essence, you make end users faster with it. Yeah, this is the overall idea. And in the next step of my demo, I get a call from Claire because some data is missing and she wants to tell me something, and she lets me know that I should increase the salary of John Lewis by 5%. because he's so highly experienced, and also it's a limited employment, so it will end end of October next year. And yeah, so I will add this data, but before that, I tell her that the biographic data for John Lewis is missing, so she promises me to send me another mail with a biography for John Lewis. So let's first yeah, do what she has told me, salary increase, and set the end date. I will do this via speech input. Increase salary by 5% and set end date to end of October next year. So you see here the language transcript from the speech recognition. This is, by the way, technically the web speech API underneath, which is used here to do the speech recognition and transform it to this text. And you see here that the computation is applied, and also end of October next year is applied, and data is filled into the form. And now next step is, as requested, Claire sends me this biographic data. Yeah, so this is the whole thing she has in her data for John Lewis. So I'm copying this to complete the data for the new employee and put it to the field. And stepping out, I see, oh, it's too long. Yeah, so there is a length restriction of 250 characters. So the biography is just too long, and I want to make it shorter, and can also do this with Chat UI5. Let's try this. Summarize short bio to at most 40 words. Oh, yeah. Sometimes the speech recognition is not working that well. In this case, it worked. So, and you see that this is one of the typical large language model capabilities, that you can nicely work on text and make it shorter. And this helped very much. And the content is the same, but it's just summarized so that it fits the length restrictions of this field. In the next step, I can now save the data, so it's complete. And saving brings me to the table of all employees we have in the company. And here I want to show that you can also interact with the table, do something like an aggregate action through Chat UI5. And the example for this is that we have a nice stellar year in our company, so that management decided to have a salary increase for all employees except the new ones. Yeah, so 10% for everyone except John Lewis. So let's try this, and you can here have a look at the salary column and see the changes. I will again try to do this via speech input. Increase salary for all employees except John Lewis by 10%. Oh, yeah, okay. This is now what happens sometimes when our quota is exceeded, so I can try it again. So this is the error you're seeing here is actually when our API calls to OpenAI's GPT-4 service is failing. Yeah. No, doesn't seem to work, so I can try again. No. So sorry for that.
Best thing when the quota is exceeded, everybody try.
Yeah.
That's the issue.
I think it works in a way that all 4 seconds you can send a new request, and if someone else is testing, and then I can try again, and yeah, no, it doesn't seem to work. Yeah, sorry for that. Yeah, I can just promise you it works. I also have a video, but I think the time is not sufficient to show this video now. So what we can do is really also work on tables and tabular data, and quite nicely change several data at once. Yeah, as you would have seen. And also with a filter, except John Lewis. This would have been the demo. And the next step, maybe I try this again, is that we can also ask questions about the UI. So let's get some information based on the data from the UI. And here the demo would have been that, or is, yeah, let's try it, to find out what is the average salary of employees in engineering department, because we need this information for some blog. So let's try if this works now. What is the average salary of employees in engineering department? Yeah, so yeah, okay. Now it works. You're lucky. So you see that this is then the average value of these three values. I have to say that these computations with large language models is not always working. Large language models, as many of you will know, are not very good at computations, but we have ideas how to improve that and to let the large language model just give us the expressions and we do the computation on our side. This would also save it's no longer necessary to transport the data, give the data of the UI, which might be confidential to the large language model, but we can keep it on our side and just give some information. This would be the overall idea, and also solve this this issue that computations are not always correct. And with this, I'm at the end of the demo actually, and I will then just in the application show a little bit about the technical background of it. So ChatUI5 is consisting of two parts. This is the UI we have seen, including some logic to read the data out of the application and send it to the second part of ChatUI5, which is a service which is then contacting the OpenAI API and and this is the core actually of the server side part, a system message which I will show in a minute, which in essence tells that the information from this user message we are entering should be applied to the UI state. Yeah, so this is the core idea of this. Of course, the text is very much longer, as you will see, but in essence, this is what is happening. And maybe I go back to the registration form and show it with this mail again and open in parallel the network so that we can have a look at the request. So here we have the mail again. Copy it here. So I hope now it's not failing because this would. So it takes a while. Okay. But here we can see how the request looks like. And this is, I think, a good point to understand how the whole thing works. In essence, we are having here this command. This is what the contents of the mail, the user message, so to say. And the ChatUI5 framework then uses UI5 means, concretely the element registry, to extract data from the UI and also to know which labels are there. So like something like date of birth and department and so on. And also extracts the current values. So you can change values. Currently, the registration form was empty when I started, so all the values are empty. And in order to ensure proper processing, we have also added, let's say, a very simplistic type information. So by default, values are string. But in order for the large language model to apply commands correctly, it also needs to know about the type. So for dates and numbers, we add this type, and the system message then instructs the large language model to also take care of this type information. Yeah, as we will see. And this is in the end everything which needs to be done. The rest happens on the server side. And let's look, before I talk about this system message and how it looks like, a little bit. Let's look at the response for this. Maybe I increase the size a little bit. So you see that we only get back the change data. So all these values which have been in the mail and which should be applied to the screen. In addition, we also introduced some start index and length, which refers to the place in the original user message where this value comes from, so that you know where this value origin is. And this is also used, for example, to in the result order these setting of new values, so that John and Louis is the first thing which is appearing here in the user message. Department is the next thing, and so forth. Yeah, and these indexes would also enable us to really highlight or make some connection between a value to be set and the place where it stems from in the original user message. Yeah, so you could do some slice on the user message. I won't do it now for time reasons, and then see that John exactly is start index 30 with length 23. I think this is usually something around here, and you would see the context, so to say, where things are coming from. Yeah, so this is how these indexes could also be used. So this is everything I wanted to tell here. Web speech API I have mentioned, which we are using. For SAP, it's a little bit web speech API. This I can say is problematic because for product standard reasons, because this also we lose control about the data, so to say, because for Chrome, I think the audio is analyzed on Google servers to produce this the string output. So if you have no restrictions here, then it's okay. In general, our product standards would not allow for using the web speech API. Yeah. So this is only here in the prototype, so to say. And now I will give a brief insight on how the server side looks like. So when we look at this, the request again, how this apply command, so to say, the endpoint for this is implemented. And we won't show the coding because this in essence just routes this thing to the OpenAI API, so to say, has some HTTP endpoint. So this is not that interesting. The most interesting part, which is really application specific, is the system message, which instructs the large language model to act on the user message. And I will just show how we did this prompt engineering. And one possibility is to just have a UI where you can, like ChatGPT or the one I'm showing here, the SAP internal one, where you can provide prompts, and the system prompt is quite long now. But this is actually, I think, the full system prompt we are using in Chat UI5. Interesting to know, maybe some of you know it, that you can prefix even in ChatGPT on your mobile even, you can provide a system message. And this is different from a user message in the sense that it, so to say, it defines the program, how the following user messages are to be interpreted by the large language model in this session. Yeah. So this is, and it also overrides and sets the context and also the limits for the user messages. And here you see that you instruct the large language model. I won't read everything, but here you see that you describe the structure of the JSON, what is contained in the request JSON, what you expect as an answer. Also, these positions, for example, should be part of the answer. Here is a part which is taking care of table data, how they are to be processed. And here you have a part where you can define how answers to a question are provided in a special property. Yeah. And here I just say because I just want the large language model to accept this. To make it short, I just say answer with okay if you understand the message. Yeah, otherwise it takes longer because the answer is very long. And now we can just briefly show how you could take now this request and try this in this prompt environment. So I just take this request here, which we have used from the mail, and push it here. And then you see that this is processed as expected, and we get a response which is very similar to the one which we have seen in the browser. Yeah, and this is how prompt engineering takes place. You could now, for example, try to get an answer in a different language, for example, by instructing the large language model and so forth. And yeah, with this, I'm done. I would say I could now say that this is not quite correct. Yeah, because if you look exactly here in the answer, you see that the start date, which is actually beginning of February next year, should be 2025. So you see the large language model has been trained in 2022. So the next year is 2023 for it. And what is missing here in the prompt is, and this is actually added by our JavaScript implementation on the service side, is that you provide the current date. Yeah, so some user information, so that you have the large language model knows what the current date is, and also the current language could be added, all this stuff. Yeah, and with this, I would say this is a rough overview of what I wanted to show and how the prompt engineering works. And yeah.
Thanks, Patrick. Very interesting. And there, before we maybe come to one or the other technical question, there was basically also a discussion about data privacy and all these basically rules that apply. And I'd say for the audience, basically, I think that's also something where we explore, and also negotiations and all the legal frames between our company and this providers is still in motion, and things are ongoing here. So we explore it, and we have, as Andreas has written, currently more or less, what is the right word, rented some private instances from the different models, where we currently can ensure that what we use is basically local to our services, our service instance. And also we currently would not share any customer data or real data from you outside, basically. So it's currently VV data that we use for playing, nothing really confidential. And so the legal frame is still ongoing, but nevertheless, you can see it, this will be done. It's only a question of time until all these contracts are settled. And nevertheless, or especially therefore, we at SAP in the development have to make up our mind and do exactly the learnings that Patrick has described, so that we can make best use of it. So yes, there are concerns. The concerns are justified. There are already some, let's say, some approaches that give you some privacy, and all the rest is subject to laws and contracts, I would say.
Yeah, maybe Stefan, I can add to this. As I mentioned, there is this idea that you actually can do the computation on our side, so to say. So don't send the data, but just let the large language model give us an expression, so to say, and which allows us to compute the actual result. So, for example, when you say something like increase salary by 5%, you can make this put this in an arithmetic expression and instruct a large language model just to give you back this expression. Yeah, this would be the idea. It doesn't help in all cases. So if you have something like summarize a text or so, this is really a large language model specific operation, which cannot be done locally. But for arithmetic expressions, for example, this would work. Yeah, I think so. And this would also save us from sending the data. Yeah, you don't have to send the salary data. You just have to say, I have a salary and it's a number, and then give me back the expression which represents increased salary by 10%. Yeah, this would be the idea. It's not implemented here, however. Yeah, so this would also help.
But in general, I mean, SAP already has productive AI features, in so named Joule in Business Application Studio and in some applications. And for them, there's certainly already some legal agreement and some data privacy and security concerns that have been dealt with. So I'm pretty sure you will find, if you buy such a product or use it, you will find some detailed terms, how exactly the data is treated, where it is sent, and so on. So it's definitely not like everything that is used by GPT is really sent to OpenAI in California or wherever. But I think Microsoft can host instances of the GPT models in their data centers, maybe in Europe and so on. So for stuff where SAP offers AI features productively, these questions have already been clarified, and you should be able to find the terms somewhere and find out whether you can send confidential data, private data, and so on. So for the instances we are using here, actually, these discussions have already been made, and there are certain rules, what we can send there and what we can't. And this is, of course, all legally checked. All right, then I will start. Now, this is a total switch from totally modern and cool AI stuff to things that are actually existing already since 13 years or more, namely the HTML control, which I mentioned later. to set the focus right here, so this is about control development, UI5 controls, and about specific areas of it, not in general or not an introduction, but about specific areas of UI5 control development, which deal mainly with the rendering and the UI5 rendering cycle and so on. So if you are either about to maybe implement UI5 controls that embed some third-party HTML from a chart library or editor library or map library or anything, then this is exactly for you. If you have some interest in how the UI5 rendering works, even though you don't write your own controls, then you can still stay, because I think there will also be some background that would be interesting for you and even useful for your standard applications. Right, so this is really about embedding such third-party widgets or libraries in UI5 controls. Those third-party libraries are usually like, give me some DOM element, and I will do some magic inside. I will create maps, I will draw 3D stuff, I will do anything inside this DOM element, this HTML element that you give me. So whether it's Google Charts here, when you create a new pie chart, you give it a DOM element. When you use chart.js instead, you give it a DOM element as soon as you create a chart. When you use the Monaco code editor using VS Code, when you create it, you give it a DOM element. When you use TinyMCE editor, you give it not a DOM element, but the ID of a DOM element, and so on. So Google Maps, give it a DOM element. So this is usually how these libraries doing one specific complex thing, how they work. And that's all cool. So you can really well wrap such custom HTML inside your UI5 control and then have a normal native UI5 control that works well. You can do data binding, so listen to events coming from them and send the data back and forth. So that's great for integration. But there's one thing, and that's the UI5 rendering. So when we go back to like 10 years ago, or maybe even 5 or a bit more, usually the rendering code in controls that creates the HTML was like render manager.write something. So it was strings. And whenever a control was changed, like a property was set or an aggregation, something was added or so, then the control is invalidated and completely removed from the document. The render is executed and the HTML is created from scratch from these strings here. Of course, if there's a map inside somewhere, then this map is boom, it's gone. Then came Shahid, sitting next to me in the office, and invented API version 2. So renderers nowadays, all in UI5 or renderers support at least API version 2, where we have a new rendering API, the semantic rendering. We don't have like strings for the entire text, but we open start for a tag, we open end when the tag is closed, we add attribute styles, and so on. And this enables the render manager to reuse the HTML and just patch it in some places. So it's close to virtual DOM, where you just update the parts that actually have changed. So this means the HTML is still there and it's not just removed and recreated. That sounds good, but for like compatibility reasons and behavior, attributes and children that are added later after rendering are still removed, and which means bam, the map is again gone. Okay, now Shahid doubled down and created API version 4. And this one is the same, but different, but it's the same. So it's the same API. Like API version 2, you still have the semantic rendering, but there's an additional contract on top. The controls who say, yes, I have a renderer API version 4, they declare that they are independent from the parent control and any HTML outside. So such a dependency would be when a list is active or inactive, then the list items have a different appearance. So whenever the list changes, the list items would then also need to re-render so they look different. This would be such a dependency, but most controls don't have such a thing. So when they have API version 2, they can probably also be API version 4, which means even if the parent control is re-rendered, the renderer of these child controls is not even called. So this is again a performance improvement we have created. And yeah, this means the control of the child controls remains untouched. And that's cool for such content like maps and charts. As long as your control handles all property changes of the control itself, because when the control itself is changed, then it's invalidated, it's re-rendered, and we are back at API version 2, so the children are removed. But you can take care of that. Another condition, all the parent controls have to be API version 2 at least. That's a given for the UI5 controls and for all controls in UI5 version 2.x, luckily. So that should not be a problem. But there's more conditions. For example, any child controls of your control also need to be API version 4. And if the application, so you see the list is getting longer and longer of conditions. If the application registers on after rendering, event delegates, now it's really technical, you don't need to understand it, then they need to set a certain flag so the API can be untouched. In the end, it's, I think, not 100% solution if you have foreign HTML from a chart library and so on. It's a great thing for performance, but it's not something that makes sure that any chart or map inside is untouched. To the rescue comes something that we have since, at least I've seen email from 2010, at least since 13, 14 years, the HTML core, sap.ui.core.HTML control, which can not only show any HTML inside, which is given by the application, but more importantly, for this use case, it has a preserve feature. So any HTML, the control was here, any HTML that was here will be, during the rendering, will be moved somewhere else to this magic area called sap.ui preserve, which is directly in the body. And after the rendering, the content will be just fetched back. So whatever was there, any map, chart, whatever, except for iframes, I think they reload, but mostly all HTML content, the canvas with any drawings and so on, all remains there. So just to show you how this works, here's a small example. Right side, you see the application, a UI5 button and an HTML control. That's this button and this HTML control. They are inside a panel. And they both get painted light green by modifying the HTML directly. And when I press the button, then this panel is re-rendered. What happens? Bam, the button is back to gray, but the HTML is still green because it was moved away. Whatever we did to the HTML, and it's brought it back. So everything we did is still there. So and this is exactly what you can use when you embed like chart libraries and so on. One small thing I learned the hard way. The HTML control can have an ID. The HTML inside can also have an ID. Don't set both to different IDs, it will break. You can set it here or set it here, but don't give two different IDs. Now, a real third-party library is, for example, Leaflet. That's a general map library that can, for example, show OpenStreetMap controls. And actually, this sample is more or less what I've shown in the very first UI5 Con in Frankfurt with, I think, still commons controls. So it has been updated a lot, but basically, it's just a custom control wrapping a map where I want to show this concept of using the HTML control. And before I go to the real application, I'll just show the most important pieces of the code here. So inside the control implementation, you have defined zoom factor, latitude, and longitude as properties. And now we're getting to the init function. And these are the things here you need to do when you embed foreign libraries creating HTML content. First thing is use the HTML control. So instantiate the HTML control, remember it, and give it some ID that includes your ID, so it's unique when you have multiple instances of your control. Second thing is establish a parent-child relationship between your control and this HTML control. So it needs to be your child, and this needs to be known to UI5, otherwise stuff will break. Third thing, best would be to use API version 4 because that's leading to less rendering. We have seen that. But actually, thanks to the HTML control, it would also work with the API version 1 too. Fourth thing, of course, you render this HTML control. So control is this from above here. So you render the HTML control just like any normal child control. And then on after rendering the first time, so if not initialized, first time after rendering, you instantiate this third-party library. Like here it's Leaflet, it's just behind this L. You pass the ID of this element here to the library and initialize whatever properties this library has. And this means this library will grab the HTML and put its stuff all inside. And from there, I think you're set, and the content here will survive everything that you're doing. So let's quickly have a look at the application. So the link is in the slides and will be also below the video when we have the recording. So basically, it's just here, this control wrapping leaflet. That's a bigger example with some data binding stuff and so on. So that's not important for my point right now, but it's also nice to have. So I included it here. So when you move the map, the sliders move, or when you move the sliders, the map moves. What you see here is there's also message toast whenever the control is actually re-rendered. So that's something I do here in after rendering. So you see when the rendering happens. We again have a parent control here in HBox. When I render the parent control, you see no message toast. This means API version 4 took care of not rendering the control. If I just say API version 2 and click render parent again, then you see rendering happened. So with API version 2, your renderer and the after rendering is called. With API version 4, it is not. But in both cases, the map remains there because we are using the HTML control. So that works with both. When you change here in the slider the longitude, then by the data binding, the longitude property of your control will be changed, which means it's invalidated, re-rendered. So when I slide here, you see a lot of re-rendering happening here. The shadows add up. So basically you see it still works. The map is still there. It moves. It's even animated because the DOM is not really thrown away. It just moved out of the place for a second and, well, not a second, for a fraction and then moved back. For the zoom, I have done something special. You don't see this re-rendering thing. Because for the zoom, I have decided to implement the setter. Normally, the generic setter does the invalidation and the re-rendering. So when I implement the setter, I can say, yes, I remember this property value, the new zoom value coming from the data binding. But with this true flag, I prevent the invalidation and re-rendering. And instead, I take care of that myself. So if I'm already rendered, then directly go to the instance of this leaflet map and call some API there, set zoom. And so it can do this animation and zoom change without a re-rendering. So that's just two options. Either you just do nothing and you get a re-rendering, which causes a bit more disruption, so to say, and more activity, or you implement the setters and prevent the re-rendering. But in both cases, as I said, the HTML control takes care that the DOM of the map is still untouched. So I think that's basically just what we've seen and what I've explained, which basically means I'm in time and at the end of this short presentation, deep dive on third-party content inside a UI5 control.
Marco has a short question because he thinks that you could use an aggregation instead of an addDependent. Right?
Yeah, Marco is totally right. So we want to establish this parent-child relationship. There are several ways to get this done. So I could define an aggregation, maybe in private aggregation, starting with an underscore and so on, and special private flag or so, and put the HTML control there. That's totally right. I could also say this.html set parent this, but that's a private API, so I don't use it here. So I thought this was just the easiest thing because the dependent aggregation is something that always exists. It's meant for dialogues and so on, but it's for stuff that is not it can be used here. That's the short version. So to just wrap it up, the reason why we brought up this topic, although the technique behind is, so to say, 13, 14 years old, is because this question comes up from time to time. How do I integrate external content in UI5 and wrapping it inside a control, especially in case of these libraries like maps, charts, and so on? It's just a nice way, and this is like the proper solid way to do that.
But I think also like this overview to have with the different APIs we have was also quite nice to have, as this was.
Yeah, I mean, API version 2 and 4 were not there like at the first UI5 console. This is definitely an update on that. And the session back then, which is also still on YouTube, was more in general about control development. So I'm not sure how big the focus on this topic exactly was. But there you would also see about the data binding, I think, and the other parts of the code snippet.
Yeah, definitely quite some new things in this year as well. So thanks, really, Andreas. I really enjoyed it. So hopefully we'll have these kind of content also more often in UI5ers Live, because I think there are still quite some newbies also outside. So also good to repeat sometimes some topics. So, but for today, I think we can close. Thanks again, Patric, for your insights on your prototype, and also on the interesting discussion on Gen AI and how to use this. And yeah, also thanks, Andreas, for your presentation. Thanks for everyone who stayed with us today. I hope you enjoyed it. Leave comments if you have some wishes what we should provide next for you. Bye-bye.
Goodbye.